I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse. Now, just go outside, enjoy yourself.
I'll say this up front. This was not an easy list to narrow down, but I gave myself one rule again: only 13 movies. And this time, as you probably saw from the title, we're talking about gangsters. You can agree or argue with my picks in the comments, but for now, let's get started. Written by former crime reporter Sidney Boehm and directed by Fritz Lang, The Big Heat tells the story of a cop who goes after a crime syndicate after his wife is murdered. It's darker and tougher than most noirs of the 1950s. One of the most shocking scenes shows Lee Marvin as Vince Stone throwing a pot of boiling coffee into Gloria Graham's face. And yes, she gets her revenge later. Stone is a violent misogynist who even puts out cigarettes on women, and yet he completely steals the movie. Glenn Ford may be the lead, but Marvin's brutal energy makes him unforgettable. He was simply born to play a gangster. Mean Streets was one of Martin Scorsese's first films, and the first time he worked with Robert De Niro. The story follows Charlie, played by Harvey Keitel, a small-time hood trying to move up the Mafia ladder with help from his reckless friend Johnny Boy, played by De Niro. This film isn't just about gangsters, it's about sin, guilt, and the search for forgiveness. Scorsese fills it with symbolism and visual metaphors that pull us straight into that restless, dangerous world. Of course, no list like this would be complete without the Godfather Trilogy. In the very first 30 minutes during that long wedding scene where every major character is introduced, it is already clear why these films became such a huge part of Mafia cinema. There are no guns yet, no blood yet. That's what makes the opening so effective. The crime, the power, and the family are all tied together from the start. Business becomes personal, and eventually a son has to take his father's place. By the time it all ends, you might even find yourself emotional over the death of someone who caused so much death himself. Maybe it's Nino Rota's music, or maybe it's something deeper.
The Mafia. I've shit 'em.
That's how London gangster Harold Shand, played by Bob Hoskins, deals with the American wise guys in The Long Good Friday. He's the kingpin of London's underworld, building casinos, making deals, and getting a little too ambitious. But when bombs start going off and bodies begin to fall, his empire starts to crumble beneath him. The louder bursts of violence, wall-to-wall needle drops, and no-holds-barred climax grab all the attention, but they're a payoff that feels thoroughly earned by the clever character study of a desperate man well out of his depth that director John Mackenzie carefully builds over the course of the film. A timeless classic. Scarface stars Al Pacino in one of his most electrifying performances. Directed by Brian De Palma, this crime classic tells the story of Tony Montana, a Cuban immigrant who rises to power in Miami's criminal underworld during the 1980s. Dressed in sharp suits and completely out of control, he looks every bit the unhinged mob boss, waving his little friend with terrifying confidence. You can't look away. Just like De Niro in his gangster roles, Pacino seems completely at home playing a boss. Together, they help define the genre, as much as Scorsese and Coppola did behind the camera. Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in America is a 4-hour epic that tells a decade-spanning story of friendship, ambition, and regret. It follows a group of Jewish kids from the New York ghettos of the 1920s as they slowly fall into a world of organized crime. Told out of order, the story jumps between past and present, showing how a life built on crime destroys everything around them. What stays with you most isn't just the tragedy, but the atmosphere. Leone's vision of pre-war New York feels so real you could almost step into it, carried along by Ennio Morricone's haunting score. This is the second Brian De Palma film on our list, and it's another must-see. Kevin Costner plays Elliot Ness, a young and idealistic FBI agent sent to clean up Chicago, a city completely controlled by Al Capone, played by Robert De Niro. With Capone always one step ahead, Ness teams up with veteran cop Jim Malone, played by Sean Connery, and together they form a small task force determined to bring the mob to justice. It's sharp, stylish, and one of the defining crime films of the 80s. Among all of Scorsese's crime films, this one stands as the most iconic. It tells the story of Henry Hill, played by Ray Liotta, who starts working for the Italian mob as a kid and rises through the ranks to become a key player in the family. Along the way, he teams up with Jimmy the Gent Conway, played by Robert De Niro, and Tommy DeVito, played by Joe Pesci. Their fast-paced, adrenaline-filled lives eventually tear everything apart. Greed and betrayal destroy the empire they built together. By the early 90s, Robert De Niro's face was already synonymous with the word gangster. But in his directorial debut, A Bronx Tale, he takes on a different kind of role, a calm, working-class father whose son gets a job in a mafia bar. The boy is drawn to the money and respect, caught between two father figures, his honest dad, a bus driver, and local mob boss Sonny, played by Chaz Palminteri. With its nostalgic doo-wop soundtrack and warm portrait of New York street life, A Bronx Tale feels like a love letter to a lost time. And somehow they found a kid who looks exactly like he could be De Niro's real son. It's almost spooky. At this point, it probably feels like we're stuck with the same few names, but with Scorsese, there's no way around it. Casino dives into a world of gambling empires, mob control, and broken relationships. On first viewing, it's hard to forget Joe Pesci, whether he's clamping a man's head in a vice or stabbing someone over a minor insult. On second viewing, the relationships stand out more. The broken marriage between Ginger, played by Sharon Stone, and Sam, played by Robert De Niro, and the friendship between Sam and Nicky that slowly turns into betrayal. Through it all, De Niro, Pesci, and Stone carry the film completely. Casino proves once again that Scorsese knows exactly how to make this world feel violent, expensive, and human at the same time. Donnie Brasco may not be as iconic as some of the other films on this list, but it is a slow burn that draws you in and stays with you long after the credits roll. The film is based on the New York Times best-selling book by Joseph D. Pistone, the real FBI agent behind Donnie Brasco, and I'm usually one of those people who says the book is better than the movie. But Donnie Brasco is one of the exceptions. Johnny Depp plays Donnie, an undercover FBI agent who works his way into the mob, and the longer he stays undercover, the harder it becomes to keep that life separate from his real one. Al Pacino plays Lefty Ruggiero, an aging, disillusioned mobster. It is a quieter performance than you might expect from him, but it leaves a strong impression. Paul Attanasio's screenplay was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay, and I'm still not sure it was fair that it lost to L.A. Confidential. Scorsese strikes again with The Departed, a tense and twist-filled remake of the 2002 Hong Kong thriller Infernal Affairs. Set in Boston's Irish underworld, it follows two men living double lives. One is a mole in the police, played by Matt Damon, and the other an undercover cop inside the mob, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. What follows is a gripping game of cat and mouse, full of betrayals, close calls, and shifting loyalties. Jack Nicholson commands the screen as mob boss Frank Costello, while Scorsese fills the film with smoky bars, thick Boston accents, and the pounding sound of the Dropkick Murphys. And that brings us to the final film on the list. The Russian Mafia arrives in London in David Cronenberg's Eastern Promises, and they're not here to play nice. Naomi Watts stars as a midwife who gets pulled into their world after helping deliver the baby of a teenage Russian prostitute. As the story unfolds, we see the dark operations of the Vori Viziconi crime family, including their trafficking network and cold efficiency. At the centre is Viggo Mortensen's tattooed driver, a man as ruthless as he is controlled. His brutal fight in a public bathhouse, completely unarmed and completely naked, is one of the most unforgettable scenes in modern crime cinema,